Hey there guys, it's Metro, and we are back with another entry in the series where I'm trying to get you ready for Mythic Plus in Shadowlands before it even launches, or at least earlier than you were ready for it in Battle for Azeroth. That's the main goal here. Trying to get everybody to where they want to be sooner rather than later. So tell your friends, if anybody has any questions or anything that I can help them with this in this regard, please let me know. But today, we're taking a look at Plaguefall. Now, this is one of my favorite dungeons. You might have heard me say that about a few dungeons, but this one is definitely one of my favorite because it's got such an open layout. And, there's a lot of dungeons like this in BFA, and it's probably going to end up in the same way. Not necessarily what I loved about BFA Mythic Plus, where people were basically skipping trash and making ridiculous routes out of this to try to, even though the same mob might give 2% count as another mob that gives 2% count. The first mob is just more dangerous and more time consuming, so they're going to do some crazy skips. And you can already see that. It's not featured in this video, but a lot of people are skipping this opening trash. And honestly, rightfully so. This is a really odd area to start the dungeon. There's a lot of mechanics going on, and you're going to see, even though it's bolstering week, you're going to see me try to pull, a relatively bigger pack here. This is effectively 2 packs, and it's just 4 mobs, but one of them is this decaying flesh giant, who is definitely a pretty interesting mob type. Now, it does have true sight, so they recently took one of these guys out, which made the skipping a lot easier, and I think that's a big problem, or a big part of why people are not wanting to do any of this trash now that they took that out. But anyway, we're going to see a couple mechanics happen here. So you're going to have a lot of these. So basically, there's 2 ways you can go right out of the gate. We're going to go the way that there's all these mushrooms, but if you go the other side, there's all these bugs. Now, since it's so early in the expansion, I'm not sure which I would recommend. I think for me, I've always enjoyed going on the mushroom side because the mobs are much easier to deal with. The bug side, it's like a lot more pesky. A lot of mobs that do like things that you have to move from. And there's also this weird hive over there that if you don't kill it, you're just stuck in combat with it. Like it's going to keep spitting out little bugs at you. So I don't really like going that way, but maybe in the future that's going to change. So, a dungeon like this, there's a lot of different routes that you can take, and we have yet to find a good one in this dungeon for me. So we'll just talk about what I'm doing and not what I'm not doing for now. But the main thing you want to see here is just as much. First of all, the big guy is going to do a cast. See if he does it soon. If he gets it off, he summons a bunch of little bugs or something, a creepy crawler there. So you got to interrupt that. Good idea as a tank to just sit on that interrupt, because it's really the only thing that you'd have to interrupt when you're fighting any of this trash. And it's pretty bad. It's going to summon a bunch of things, and it's going to get pretty out of control if you don't interrupt that. So, but yeah, as you can tell, bolstered, this guy bolstered is kind of rocking me, and I think I actually die here, but oh yeah. So actually, you see, oh yeah, perfect. All right, good footage here. We end up somebody actually aggro stuff on that side of the room, which is really bad. I aggro even more stuff, and I don't know. At this time, when I recorded this, I'm pretty sure this trinket I had was still bugged. It was aggroing all kinds of stuff, but you can see, yeah, really, you see those fen hatchlings coming in from the left there. That's the little bugs I was talking about that come from the little, it's like a hive or a little mound of bugs on the left side. And if you were going to fight those, you'd have to kill that as quick as possible. Otherwise, you're going to be kind of fighting fodder that has no value to the dungeon. But here's the patented, let's run backwards, even though we literally don't even want to kill this trash. Aggro, another thing. One thing about this dungeon is that these plague rocks are kind of in really bad spots. I don't know why. Like this one that is standing right next to me now is actually not even there when you start the dungeon. It's like flying in, and by the time it gets to where it lands, you you've passed it severely, so you might not actually see that, but yeah, you see it flying around now. This is pretty common that it gets aggroed after a wipe, so just something to keep in mind. If you've wiped here, keep your eyes on where the group is, because there's going to be a good chance that somebody aggroes either that one or that one up there on the hill. But if you're following the route that I'm walking through, it's pretty straightforward not to aggro any of that stuff. It's just, I think a lot of people aren't ready for it, and it causes some problems. So long story short, this trash does a bunch of things that, like, I mean, are mildly interesting, but the main one here is this fungi storm. This is really something you want to interrupt. It does a lot of nature damage. It's kind of just like an AoE. Hits probably everybody in a certain yardage of range, but I don't know. Obviously, since they're stunnable, Fear D&D, I've been using Pheromones a lot as Death Knight. It's pretty easy to get these things interrupted, but somebody has to do it, which I'm not doing either, but you see how much damage we're taking, so definitely that's probably the main takeaway from this trash, and obviously that giant mushroom. Now I'm gonna see if you've been paying attention. How new are you? When you see a giant mushroom with like a 50-yard green swirl underneath it, do you A, stand in it, or B, move out of it? It's so weird that like mechanics like that. Look how freaking big that is. It's so bizarre looking. It's like, is anybody gonna actually like get confused by that mechanic? But anyway, you gotta find like 4 or 5 pulls of these, and there's gonna be this fungi stormer. That's the one that's gonna do the whirlwind. The fungal mancer, I think, has a cast or something like that, but I don't know. The fact that I don't know exactly what all this stuff does should probably tell you everything you need to know. But there's that fungi storm. You really want to wait on this cast, like especially as Bloody Key. There's a lot of ways I can interrupt it. I don't know why I'm not doing it in this run, but I could literally just, it's just like mobs. In certain times, you can just grip right at the end of their cast, and they won't get a single cast off, stun, etc. This is a great job for the tank, and something you'll definitely want to do. Binding fungus as well. I'm not sure. Oh, that's this here. Yeah, okay. It's going to be, if you run over this, you're going to get rooted and you're going to take a fair amount of nature damage. Also doing this Wonder Grow, which I believe is just like a massive buff to one of the mobs. We can interrupt that. But yeah, for the most part, I would say this trash is very straightforward. And it's very obvious. I think it's maybe the best. Just make sure you're interrupting. Whenever you see these fungal stormers, make sure you're ready to stun that whirlwind type ability they do, because if that gets off any significant period of time, you're going to be in serious trouble there. So binding fungus again, but yeah, no, nothing really special here. I mean, it's fortified and they're doing a fair amount of damage, but otherwise the mechanics don't really factor in much at all. Now I see people have this debuff. I think it's just from them standing too close to this. I don't actually know what it does, but I'd imagine besides it exploding, it doesn't even explode. Well, it's definitely not something you want to stand in, like I was saying. I don't know exactly what it does. Stuff like that always kind of slows me down in the learning process, because for me, I've been playing this game for 15 years, and it's so freaking obvious that you don't want to do certain things in the game that I never actually learn why you don't want to do them. It's like Blizzard almost supersedes the learning process because the mechanics are so obvious, you know what I mean? And you almost have to fail them a bunch just to understand them. Anyway, talking about failing a bunch, this is going to be an interesting room with bolstering, which it is this week. Long story short, these mobs just basically like leave a puddle on the ground when they die. But of course, with bolstering, it turns into a much different situation. And, ideally, we'd probably just pull everything here, but this is going to be even probably a little bit too much. So, bolstering, it's a whole different conversation. Usually you want to have even AoE DPS, and we have some of it, but for the most part, it's going to be tough in pugs. And then, of course, we've forgotten about the fix there. So, actually, this isn't a bad idea. Just honestly, like, it's stupid as it sounds, like wiping right there is fine, because not good for the timer, of course. You saw that bird flying around too, by the way. It's not good for the timer, of course, but going into that ad with trash up is really bad. Like, you have to plan way better than I've planned this far in the beta. But now it's just a lot easier, because now he's got no stacks. Now I make another mistake here. I pull him when not everybody's here. So that's not ideal either, because every second he's alive, he does more damage. If you're not aware of this, you'll see the stacks. It's already at 6, already at 7. So we do not want this to get this high. It's also storming, as you see, just getting hit by that tornado. Does nature damage, I think. Is that what that was? Has to be. I don't think anything else would have done nature damage. But, and there goes the trinket, somehow aggroing more trash. So I think a second wipe's coming up. But yeah, really, it's not actually like coming off of this mob. You want to make a big play. You know what I mean? So not, kind of barely like hanging on and killing it the last second like we do a lot of times. That's way better. Like, wiping is way better. Absolutely. Like, right now we should totally wipe, because if we killed this mob right now with everybody dead, it's a wipe. It's just useless. We've wasted our time. It's better to wipe. It's actually better. Like, we're gonna come back and kill this very, very quickly, and then we'll have the buff for the maximum amount of time, and we'll have no issues. And there's our buddy the Plague Rock. Let's just get this thing out of here. I think it's probably the right play, but this is gonna happen. I'll tell you what. If you wipe, which obviously you're gonna do eventually, it's gonna get aggroed. People aren't ready for it. It does this wing buffet, which is a knockback. It's a pretty big knockback. It used to be bugged. It used to like hit anything in its path besides, like, not just the player, I mean. So like if there was these yellow mobs in the wing buffet, it would aggro them too. But it doesn't do that anymore, luckily. At least I haven't seen it do that in a while. So, but yeah, inevitable, an inevitability. I believe this trash is. So, just got to get it out of the way. All right, so here we go. We're back, and we're now using a more conservative approach here. Make sure I'm not going to use that trinket again. And now we're going to get this. Now, of course, this isn't the right time to do this. Ideally, you want to have the prideful buff for, like a boss or something major. And I think that's another reason why people are skipping the start, because I don't think there's any way you can get through that without a rogue skip, like without skipping a big portion of it and do the boss with the buff. It's just not possible. But instead, what actually happens a lot is the buff is like so close to being up again that you can just go and pull some trash. You can actually skip this boss. There's been a couple dungeons in the game that's had stuff like this, and you're about to wipe again. So, anyway, we definitely could do that. I don't necessarily know if it's a good idea or not, but it's definitely possible. I just think a lot of people would realistically not do what I'm doing here route wise. But I just don't know, besides rogue skip, how you would not, So it's not really a good indication of what to expect, but it's definitely something to think about because there's not really much you can skip here. And of course, you want to make as few mistakes as possible with Count, because this is actually a really dangerous dungeon for Count. Not necessarily dangerous in the sense that you might fail the key over it, but you could easily get to the end of the dungeon and not have Count. In fact, I've done that every single time I've done this dungeon recently. I don't know what they changed, but Count used to be a lot higher from just standard mobs. Now it is much, much harder to get Count. Now, anyway, let's talk about the extra dungeon. So these Plague Belchers, this is kind of like little bit of an indication of what's to come on this boss. They're going to summon these slimy morsels, and they're going to come from the actual slime on the sides, okay? So you can pull them really, really far away from the slime, and it'll be a lot easier to deal with. But instead, what should be done is they should just be either quickly killed or CC'd as soon as they spawn. They should not be getting this far. So realistically, it's better to not move the mobs further away from them, because it's going to make it harder to CC them. But, in theory, you can move them so far that it would actually just make them all funnel in from the same direction. I'm pulling both here because I feel like there's no reason not to. But every time the mob eats one of these slimes, it gets a small heal, and it also gets much stronger. Stacking buff it gets, you can see, has 1 stack of the buff there, 2 stacks on this one, 3 stacks, 4 stacks now. So it's not really an ideal situation, but honestly, it doesn't really slow you down. I think it would slow you down further to try to kill them. So instead, we should just make sure they're CC'd or not getting to them, and just kind of keep moving them away, or making it possible to not eat them. But again, it really doesn't matter as long as you're killing them. First of all, our damage is bad, but you would typically kill these so fast that it's not going to cause any issues. And that's going to be a theme that you're going to see on this fight too, because anyway, as you see, 28%, we could easily go and get another, there's actually one more slime here too, that's funny. We could easily go and get another mob or 2 and get Count and use the buff, but I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do once this expansion is actually out properly, so I haven't decided that was a good idea yet. Okay, so let's talk about this boss. This boss, I think, is one of the harder bosses in this. I think it's probably the hardest boss in this dungeon if you don't kill it fast. I still don't really understand how people are killing bosses so fast, but it's just doesn't have a lot of health right now on a non-tyrannical key. But then on a tyrannical key, it's like an entirely different fight. I can tell you everything you need to know about this fight, but the difficulty of this fight is going to come from having to deal with these mechanics many times. So what you might see here is not necessarily indicative of what you might face in the future. Anyway, Plague Stomp, it's an AoE, it knocks you back. The reason this might be a problem is because if you at any point you stand in this slime around the room, you get a I'd say pretty vicious debuff. I don't know if it can be dispelled. I think it might be a disease or something, but you don't want to get knocked back into the slime. You also don't want to get knocked back too far away from the boss because of this mechanic, Slime Wave. It's just going to hit like a really wide area in front of it, and if you get hit by it, you pretty much die. Now, I think I've seen people get hit by it and survive, depending on the key level, but it's a very bad idea, let's put it this way. And I have some kind of disease on me. I'm not really sure where that's coming from. Probably just part of the fight. But here's the main mechanic. This is like 50% of the fight, if not more. Beckon Slime. Now, the way it works is he summons 4 slimes, okay? 3 small ones, pretty sure. But the main thing is a really big one. And I'm pretty sure the way it works is the more health that the slime has, if he eats it, the more health he gains, okay? So, like, if you literally let them all run right to the boss and not damage them whatsoever, they would heal him to full. But I'm also relatively sure that if he gets one at like 4% health or something like that, like the blob is at 4% health, it's not going to heal him that much. I'm not 100% sure that's the case. First of all, that should never happen. And second of all, it's hard to test, obviously. But I do think I've seen that happen. Now, more importantly is how do you deal with it? They're coming from all different angles, but the one that's closest to him is always going to be the big blob. The one that has the most health, and realistically, the one that you should probably have a plan to deal with, one way or the other. Whether you want to kill it or you want to CC it, a lot of options, but it's going to be based on your comp. It's going to be based on how confident your group is, or also might be the key difficulty. But the problem is that these things have a lot of health, and trying to kill them is going to substantially slow the encounter down. So maybe you want to do that. Maybe substantially slowing the encounter down isn't a problem. But I do think it would be best if you could just ignore them and just kill the boss. Because the less times he does this, the easier it is to control them. Like, if you have one CC'd and another one comes out, then you need a second CC. And if somehow a third one comes out, then you're done. You know what I mean? So you can't really just kite him infinitely because he stops and does a lot of mechanics. But anyway, you see the big one is always as close to him as it can get. So this is something that there might be some meta strategy forward in the future. I don't necessarily see one developing right now. But I originally thought that one always spawned right there because it always spawns right there when I fight him where I am. So I tanked him all the way on the other side of the room, and then it just spawned on a different location, completely upset the strategy. So the way it works, big blob always as close to him as possible. Now, one tip I can give immediately, Hunter can trap it. Warlock can banish it. That might be the strongest option because then it can't be broken no matter what, and you don't even have to move them. But obviously stuns, slows, death grips, anything you have can be used here. But you see, three small ones. So you see I'm already kind of trying to like pull off some rod end kite strategy stuff, like let them come in and then move them. But this time we're going to kill them. Frost Nova helps as well. Just, I don't know, it's like a huge DPS loss though, right? Like we were killing the boss so fast. We failed the lust as well. Pretty sure that Warlock just got hit by that too. But yeah, in the end, it's not ideal. So actually, did we let him get hit? Yeah, we did. Okay, so let's see what happens here. So he has 47%, and this mob has 20k HP. And it's about to go up 20k. Let's see. Stupid artifacting. I don't know why that happens in this program. Well, he gained... Let's see exactly how much he gains. I don't know if there's anything to be learned by this, because I don't know if it gets hit a second time. But you might be able to see it goes from 47 to 53. So that's a lot more health than the slime had. But it might be some percentage-based thing. Obviously not ideal to let it hit. But it doesn't necessarily matter as long as it's not... Like, it doesn't do anything else, right? Like, there's no other detriment other than it heals him. And you really don't want this fight to last any longer than you had to. But if somehow you can just let them hit and you can just burn through the damage, that would probably be the way you would do the fight. But now you see I have him over here kind of just by accident, and now there's the big slime there. So luckily we get a pheromone, fear proc, and there's the banish. So as you see, banish works, and that's pretty useful. Otherwise, mage whiffs on the ice, on the frost nova, uses a cold snap or something to get a second one. But yeah, I would say probably kill the small ones. And as you see me getting knocked into that, that's that little puddle debuff I have right now. It does a lot of damage, I'm pretty sure. It doesn't look like it can be removed either, so... Not ideal. You see it rip through my AMS there. But that's it. We literally killed the boss. He healed once, and we killed him before a second set ever became a problem. I'm seeing that a lot on Fortified, and when I did this on Tyrannical, it was a mess. Like, people had no idea what to do. So, I don't know. Just something to keep in mind on that boss. It could be one of the harder fights in the game, but if you kill it really, really quick, then it just doesn't do anything. He doesn't actually do anything. It was really tough on Grievous, though. Okay, so now we're on to the next part of the dungeon, and this is where things start to get a little more freeform. Let's put it this way. There's a lot of trash down here, a lot of trash, and I don't necessarily know what's going to be looked at as good and bad to kill. There's some ambient mechanics happening here, like a like a barrel that when you kill it, it explodes. These mechanics, the slime claw, rotting slime claw, puts this really heinous debuff on you. I think it puts it on the closest target too, or something, because I see it on the mage. Not necessarily sure, but it's that corroded claws there. So if you want to interrupt that or stun that more, so you can. Otherwise, it looks like it's a disease. I'm sure you can AMS it, or also just get it dispelled by a paladin, etc. But so what I'm doing is I'm kind of going up this left side, and we're skipping some things that I shouldn't be skipping because we're not going to have count. But it's definitely pretty. I like the fact that you can do this. So I do think if you're going to pull everything out of the gate, this is not a bad idea. Count, obviously, you don't want to go through all of this area, but I'm skipping a lot of things. Like there's a lot of count down there, and honestly, I think it's some of the harder trash in the dungeon too. I don't necessarily agree that the start is something that you want to skip. I think some of this trash is more valuable to skip, but the reason I would feel that way is because it's not necessarily about efficiency for me. It's about survival. So here you're going to see why I feel that way. This mob is actually one of the more difficult mobs in the dungeon, and there'd be a couple of these that you'd be pulling. So let's talk about him. He's got a couple of things that you need to be aware of. Bladed Spinebreaker. So jagged spines, you see it puts a little gray or brownish circle underneath every player. If you get hit by it, it's not good. Let's put it that way. Easy to dodge. But at the same time, he's doing this festering belch. Now, this is another mechanic that's a bit flavorful in Shadowlands, where it's a thing it's a frontal. Oh wait, maybe it's not. Oh yeah. It's a I don't know. Either way, it's definitely a frontal. There's a couple mobs in Shadowlands that do like a frontal and a backwards cone thing, which is kind of funny, obviously. But yeah, one way or the other, just dodge that. If you get hit by that, it puts like a disease on you, I think. Really bad. But the main mechanic is actually after you kill him. And this is something that I'm kind of surprised at how many people whiff on this one. It's kind of funny. Obviously, the jagged spines is a big issue. And a lot of times when you're dodging this, you'll be running into the festering belch, which is not good. That's the main combo. But afterwards, he spawns 5 little blobs, okay? Now, because of where he died, it looks like they all spawn right on top of each other. This is a really, really good thing. If you can have this happen, this is really good. Because the way you get rid of them is you run over them. Now, when you run over them, they do damage to you, as you can tell. I'm taking a lot of damage from that. But somebody's got to do it. Otherwise, you can just kill them. They have like a health pool, like normal mobs, and you can just kill them. Then nobody has to do that. But I definitely think the safer play is just have the tank run over them and maybe use a defensive to do so. But just keep that in mind. If you don't do it, they turn into like a mob or something bad. I can't remember. Again, I haven't failed enough to know, but it's not a good thing. I know that. I remember it does something bad and people were arguing about it. So I think it probably spawns a new mob that you would have to kill for no count. Now, originally, if you can see here, there's this kind of path around the right here. We can skip all of this stuff in the middle. I don't know what this is. It seems really out of place. It's like this mini gauntlet. It's like literally 2 platforms of a gauntlet. And you could skip it all if you want to go to the right here. But since we're always short on count, that doesn't seem like that's an option anymore. Or it would be if we actually like did more count in the middle and then we skip this. I don't know. I'm not really sure what is and isn't valuable, but just be aware this slime tentacle is going to just be standard cast. It's going to try to like grip you, and those mobs are going to explode. Maybe we should show that in a little bit more depth there. So anyway, the tentacle, like the problem with this tentacle is it's constantly like you have to tank it very close to the slime itself. And if you're standing in that, again, you get this debuff, so you don't want that to happen. But it's the hitbox has been made bigger at least, so that's nice. But yeah, so the gauntlet part is these rigged plague boars that are coming in from this NPC down there. And I don't know if it's when they die or they do a cast, but yeah, I think they just randomly explode. So as you see, the paladin unaware. But if you get hit by that, you die. And then there's these canisters. There's these canisters that will explode and kill either you or the enemy that you're fighting if they're in it too. So we talked about that in one of the dungeon videos and the dungeon change video, because it actually like was changed substantially. But regardless, that's actually a really bad problem. I'm still in combat here, so not ideal. Luckily, we can skip ahead. But yeah, we wiped there just mostly because the healer was dead. But as you see, that tentacle is just going to stay up there. I think it's probably still in combat with people. That's why its health isn't moving. But these things don't stop spawning, so I don't know. It's kind of a pain. Oh yeah, and if you're not in range of this tentacle, since it can't move, it's gonna do this vile spit, which as you see is absolutely destroying me. So not necessarily what you want to do. And then when that barrel explodes, gonna do damage. Does not hit the manifestation of pride. I wonder if it could have. I don't know. So at this point, seems like a very bad time for this to spawn. We have this freaking stupid gauntlet going on still, and we don't even have everybody here. I have no idea why this hunter's not releasing. But we definitely don't want to be fighting it with that gauntlet. Paladin gets stunned by the warlock there. Not ideal. He bubbles it. Good play on his part, but yeah, I would say this is definitely not when you want to get to 40%. You know, it's all about pre-planning though. Like there's nothing you can do about this at this point. Like we could skip it and try to come back to it, but it's like, well, we need count and we have done things in a way that is not going to give us a good split on these prides. So I don't know. That's just how it's going to go. Oh, are we actually going to wipe again here? I forgot. Yeah. But yeah, I'm telling you, this looks bad. Like wiping to this thing at the last second is not good, certainly, but it's not terrible either. Like you come back, the mob has the same health, you one shot him, and now you have a much cleaner. Like if we killed them with like 2 or 3 people dead, we'd have to res. You know, like either that or they'd release, and we'd have even less uptime. It's like it's a really that mob is very dangerous. I'm telling you, that affix is going to go down as the hardest affix because for your casual, your average player, not necessarily like casual, but just somebody who's not spending a lot of time preparing or thinking about dungeons, they're going to come in here and they're going to get rocked by that thing. They're not going to know how to deal with it. They're not going to know when to deal with it. And the group is going to make zero benefit out of its buff. The thing is, it gives you a massive buff, right? So you have to make that buff worth more than you potentially failing to it. And that's not happened much in the keys I've done. But when it does, you can really tell, like, oh my God, is that buff good? So really what we should do here is we should skip it. We should not get this buff now. We should go down and do more trash and then take this buff to the boss. But this guy is just, yeah, doesn't care about any of that. So whatever, that's life, but that's pugging life, I guess. So now there's this like mini boss, I guess. I don't know, another name dude. Doesn't have that much health, but he's going to do some things. Pestilence Bolt, again, it's just a damage cast. You can interrupt that. The main problem here is these blighted or plagued things are just going to keep coming up here. And he's going to actually try to like explode himself or something. I don't know what that, I really don't know what's going on in this small area. All I know is dodge, interrupt, AMS, use magic defense. But if I got hit by that, I would die. And that's it. Did he die? Let's see. I feel like he took damage from them exploding, but maybe not. He died really quick. 20%. Oh, he definitely did. Oh, wow. I'm just realizing that for the first time. That's interesting. 20%, 19%, and boom, 2%. Okay, so that's interesting. So that's actually probably a better thing than I expected. I still don't. How much count did he even give? 41. Yeah, the small guys give 0 count as well, which is another problem. He gave 4% count, so that's actually pretty good if you can get that to go. Get that to go this way. Now, here we go. Another complicated room. There's some trash here that looks optional, but I can't imagine how it would be because the boss is in this room as well, and he's going to jump from platform to platform. It's going to be part of the encounter. But yeah, you really need to clear this out. Now, the way it works is as soon as you engage any of the trash on these 3 platforms, he will then start jumping around. It's a bigger deal than it looks like it is because he might jump on top of you while you're fighting the trash. So ideally, in a perfect world, you would gather like at least more than 1 pull of this trash together, kill it in a safe area, and then make sure he doesn't jump as you're going to the other spot. The amount of times I've had him jump on top of us while fighting is very high, and it seems like something that's just going to absolutely wreck pugs, especially people who aren't aware of where he is when he's jumping, because that's just a straight up wipe, like especially with bolstering. Like if we fight him with the trash, it's over. So I'd say the safest play is just pull them and get them off the main area here. Like you see this giant mushroom to the right here, this thing that we're standing next to, he will not aggro, like he'll land right here, and he will not aggro if we're to the right of that. So that's what I'd say is my recommendation is just, now what I'm going to do here is see, I'm going to try to pull him, like I'm going to try to pull that other pack before he starts jumping and causing issues. But it's not really going to work out. I've tried to do it in multiple facets where we pull both sides and then I kind of Gorfians them together. But there's like 5 casters across 6 mobs, so it's really difficult. And It's definitely not what you want to do this week with bolstering fortified. In the future, though, if you can just get some silences and interrupts, I do think this would be the play. Pull both sides, get them together, kill them quick, and that's it. Then you don't have to worry. You fight them down here. You know what I mean? The boss can't jump here, so you can only jump to the 4 kind of mushroom platform areas. But you see his jump, he just jumped across, so now we're going to quickly go over here. He will not jump back to the same platform he was on, so it'll take a while. I think he just kind of goes around in a circle, honestly, but this is the way I'm going to handle it, because this is that spine breaker again. Relatively dangerous mob, and he's got a lot of health, so festering belch. Oh, okay, so I got hit by that. First time I've seen that, and that is a very big knockback and also high amounts of damage, so cool. You got to see that at least. It's funny, right? Like, you learn more from the failure than from the success. And gonna get hit by it again. It looks like the hunter did that time, but he's good somehow. Somehow lives that. But yeah, this is where you want to fight. If you're gonna fight the trash and the dude's jumping around, make sure you're fighting. See how close he is? Can you see that? Maybe you didn't see it. I'll show it one more time because this is actually that. It's that important. Like, if I pull the boss here, it's over. First of all, bolstering is gonna wipe us, but there's the boss right there. We're just on the other side of this mushroom fighting, and he's like, I don't hear anything. What do you hear something? He doesn't hear it, so plenty of time to kill him. Now, of course, again, yeah, that festering belch is only a frontal, so that's good. Oh, see you later. What the hell? How would that guy even get hit? Okay, so anyway, here we go with these little things again. You just run over them. They do damage to you. If you don't, you have to kill them. If you don't kill them, they turn into something. It makes sense because it's metamorphosis is the cast they're doing, so presumably they turn into a demon hunter, which we don't want in our keys. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so let's go ahead and res. Okay, he's going to res. All right, so let's talk about the fight now. Now, he's going to actually jump on top of us. And this is actually my plan because it's like, well, we could try to pursue him. This is another thing that happens all the time with this fight. If he was like over there and we're like, okay, here we go. We're ready. Time to go. Run across. Time to... Oh, he jumped away. Happens all the time. Like, we run across. We're ready to pull him. And then as we get there, he jumps away. It's like, okay, we'll get him this time. Here we go. Run across. And by the time everybody gets there, he jumps away. So anyway, what I'm going to do is just, he's going to jump over here. I'm like, hey, I'm going to catch him. And I do, and it doesn't help, doesn't do anything. But anyway, so he jumps on top. If you get hit by that, it deals damage. So yeah, that's good. Now, Bloodlust, great idea in this fight, because the more he jumps, the worse your damage is going to be. And he also does a lot more mechanics than just jump, okay? Now, that mechanic there, slime injection, as you see, freaking 60-second debuff, okay? It's a very, very, very dangerous debuff that just lasts the full duration of its cooldown. And it's dispellable. So, obviously, the healer has to dispel. It reminds me a lot of a mechanic in Mop on the Jade Turpet Semple, as Harry would say. The last boss in there, it put like a debuff out that was like, not very dangerous per second, but if you didn't dispel it, you just die. Like, there was no way you were going to live it for the whole time. And the amount of healers I ran with that just did not know that. It was like, we can't do the fight unless you dispel. Are you aware of that? Like, you not dispelling is not optional. It's a wipe. It's the only mechanic that can kill us, and you're not doing it. This is going to happen again in this dungeon. And luckily, as a DK, I can AMS it. I'm horrible at doing it for some reason. I'm just never paying attention to it, I guess. But I can AMS it, and it will prevent a 60-second debuff. Now, also, that erupt, I think it's the same thing. If you just run over it, it explodes, because that mob, I don't even know what that is, but I've never seen it cause an issue. Now, as you see, we're running across this slime again, and we're getting the debuff. This is a big problem, especially, I think you can get we're seeing multiple stacks of the debuff. So this is part of the fight. If you wanted to take 0 damage from the slime, you could, but you wouldn't be able to cut across there. He jumped all the way across. So we'd have to go all the way around, and that's going to be way slower. Now, this is where the fight begins properly. He's going to summon a bunch of little slimes, which I think are just adorable, by the way. I love them. But they're not adorable in this fight. They're going to be very dangerous. Here's this one. The green one is doing Virulent Explosion. Now, have you been paying attention? What does Virulent Explosion do when the cast get off? Does it A, heal you, B, invite a Ragnaros player, or C, wipe you? Maybe 2 of the 3. But anyway, of course, you need to kill that. Now, it's not as easy as that, because he's also going to summon another one. There's the Congealed Slime, little purple slime. The purple slime makes any target within a few yards of it take much, much less damage. So typically as a tank, you might try to just tank all the targets on top of each other because you're like, I good tank, I help DPS. And the warrior's like, good warrior, me cleave, right? But that doesn't help because you're actually slowing the DPS. And if I did that, we'd wipe. We would not kill that green slime before it would explode. That's how much damage is lost there. So, but anyway, he's still putting out this debuff and all this. So really what you want to do here, ideally, is probably knock this dude away. I've seen people do that where they kind of wind up and just kind of maybe a Kultiran knockback or a Shaman knockback or anything you can do. Just kind of get this slime away from Dr. Ickis as well. Keep them maybe somehow, if you're permanently able to do that, like you're 100% confident in that, then you can keep the two targets together. Otherwise, just kind of keep them maybe in like a little triangle pattern, like slime gets knocked to the left, the virulent slime's on the right, and Dr. Ickis is kind of just close enough to be getting some cleave. It's just going to make the fight go a lot faster, but otherwise you got to kill him. And he's also going to do this. He puts Icebound Fortitude on me. I don't know why. I mean, that's the icon for Icebound Fortitude, but I don't think it is Icebound Fortitude because that would be way too kind. Yeah, I don't know. It's probably some disease or something like that. So, or some dot. But now you see that's also dispellable. So now that guy just dispelled that. And if I had the other dot, there's slime injection. So now does he have the dispel? Probably not. Is he aware? I don't know. So like these are things to consider. A lot of things going on in this fight, and see if we run over. Yeah, I feel like if you just run over that thing, it goes away. I still don't understand what that does. I assume if it gets its cast off, it does something bad, but again, he's also going to do this jump around mechanic too on the platform. You'll see it again. He spawns another slime. You see he's jumping around there. He's going to try to land on players, and once he lands, regardless, he's going to shoot out lines of greenness, and they do also do damage. Also look like they knock you back if you get hit. But it's relatively difficult. He does it quite quickly, so you got to be ready, and you got to kind of put yourself in a position that no matter what triangle cross pattern thingy it spawns, you're not going to get hit by it. So you basically just want to be about 10 yards away from him. Then it's a lot easier. If you're like 1 yard away from him, like, oh, I've successfully evaded the jump, but now you're definitely getting hit by the stuff afterwards. So, but now there's another thing here at play I should mention. You won't see it in the video. If I'm not close to Dr. Ickis, he starts doing this ridiculously dangerous cast. Like if there's not the tank who's got threat on him in melee range, he will just spam this ridiculous cast and you will wipe. So originally that was my plan. I was like, let's just move this. I'll just tank this blob away. Everyone else can kill Ickis and the slime, and that's the way it's going to go. But it took me a while to realize that we were not going to be able to do that because how severe this dot was, or it's like spamming some kind of magic damage and does a lot. So that's the fight. It's a very complicated encounter, but if you kill it quick, again, just like the first boss, he's not going to do a lot of mechanics, and that's going to make things a lot easier. So that's pretty much it. Complaining slightly because I'm not getting dispels quickly, but again, if I AMS properly, that would just be a huge... It's kind of like Rixa. Well, not really, because that fight, there's 2 debuffs, but it's almost like Rixa in that way because there's a lot of things that can be dispelled, and if the healer's not ready for all of them, or the group's not ready for all of them, it could easily cause a wipe. Now, here's another... I don't know what this guy's doing. He making me think that I'm doing something wrong here. But the reason I feel that way is because this is another really wide open area, and you could effectively kill nothing in here if you wanted to, pretty easily too. I don't even think you would need to skip much at all or use a rogue or anything like that. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna go up the right side. There's gonna be more of these tentacles. Now there used to be 2 tentacles. There used to be 1 here and 1 here. Now there's only the 1. Luckily, that's less count, but it always would aggro. And if somebody's not in range of the tentacle, like we said on the previous pack of the tentacles, it does a big cast, and that's not gonna work out. So luckily, there's only 1. Kill him pretty easily, stunnable, etc. But he's gonna try to grab you, and then we try to. Oh man, it hurts. Like it really does. So don't let that happen. If you can stun it, there it is, Crushing Embrace. We grabbed the Paladin. Wait, what the hell? I thought he would grab me. I thought it was always me. He just randomly grabs the Paladin. Maybe it's just anybody in melee range. But yeah, so Paladin bubbles out of it, and that's fine, I guess. But you can just stun it. Now, anyway, these Defenders of Many Eyes. These are undead. There's a couple undead in the dungeon. I haven't been talking about that in the dungeon, but this is a good target to mind control as DK, even with the changes, because it puts up the shield that makes you take less damage and also prevents the mobs from taking less damage just by mind controlling it. There's the vial spit. You see, it is interruptible, but yeah, probably just want to be in melee range, and you don't have to interrupt it. But yeah, so if you're going to do any mind controlling, that's a good target because it takes the potential of there being a big shield type ability going out. Kind of like the area in Taldazar on the right side there where, the mob's going to put that AoE shield. That was never a good target, but it was always one that you could think like, well, I could take that out of play. It makes it a lot easier. And I fail again to calculate for 60% because it's been so long since we've had one of these that I almost completely forgot that we were even having the affix. So this is definitely not what you want to do. Again, another key mistake. You can learn more from the mistakes. And then that's definitely not what you want to do. Trinket, it's just messing everything up. But I would definitely, we're going to need that. So, hey, you know what? If we pulled this off, we look like geniuses. I'm not a genius, though. I'm an above average intellect as a Blood Death Knight. That's as far as, no, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so yeah, definitely don't do this. But again, it works out fine because we're going to come back here. This mob is very low. I'm getting him even lower. And as long as we come back as a unit, get the stacks, it's going to help way more than just trying to fight through that and get killed at like 1% with a bunch of people dead. It's definitely better than I don't know. I just don't know how this is going to play out in reality when people actually like are caring about keys, like properly caring about them, because I frankly feel like it's going to cause a lot of issues with disbanding, a lot of people quitting. It's like, oh, we got the buff and then we wiped or something like that. People are just going to quit. So anyway, obviously making some errors, making an adjustment there, so I don't do that anymore. But so we get the buff here quick, and then we can go do some things. And I think I should go left. I don't go left away. I really should. That pack in the middle, with the route we've been doing, I feel like we should not even be trying to avoid it. There's no reason we need it severely. But I don't know. I guess I keep thinking like, maybe something's going to change here. Because before, we couldn't get undercount. We could not get undercount. But anyway, there's a couple things to notice here. There's a bunch of stuff on the right side here, which you can use to get count. And then there's a tentacle here. If you aggro this tentacle, you're in serious trouble because this one's in the dead center of the slime. And really all you have to do is kind of like run right here. So what you do is you run right here and then around and you're good. You can also just go behind here if you want. But if this happens a lot. If somebody aggros this, that's not good because it's in the dead center of the slime there. You're going to be tanking it in the slime and that is suboptimal. So, okay, now down here is actually some of the most interesting trash in the dungeon. Let's talk about it. You're going to see it immediately. Brood Ambusher is going to be present, and it's going to have these small mobs with it that are going to complicate things severely. So we've aggroed a second one. Now there's 2 ambushers, and what they're going to do, well, let's just see it happen. And then there's also this web dude. It's also the same mob, actually. The Brood Ambusher is the one that does this web. What this does is it tries to root you. If the cast gets off, I can't remember, but either way, you can stun it. Don't worry. Yeah, it's not getting off until the cast is over, so just stun it. But you see these stealth things. Here's the main mechanic. So basically what's going to happen is they're going to spawn a ton of small spiders, okay? And they're going to try to do this cast that if it gets off, it's probably going to one-shot the target. There's going to be like 8 of them or something like that, and they're all going to try to do this cast. If all 8 get them off, that target's dead. But what you can do is you can disrupt them by getting them out of stealth and just killing them. So it's harder than it sounds, but it's definitely a major, major priority here. At any time that happens, it's a disaster. So you really got to be ready for it. Made a small mistake here pulling both of these, but honestly, you're probably going to have to do this. Like, you can't just fight a single mob here, especially one like this. So you're going to probably have to get used to this. And I don't necessarily know what the best advice would be. Like, the way it works is not very obvious, but you can tell where they are. I might be able to see it better on the next pack when there's only one. But you can tell where they are before it's a problem, and then you just have to deal with it. And if you don't, again, they get the cast off and everybody dies. But if you do, it's nothing special. Now, there's also more mobs in this pack. There's this sniper who's casting this Call Venom Fang, which is summoning this stupid spider pet. And he's also spraying poison AoE type thing, so not handled well at all. And again, a bit indicative of what's going to happen in this dungeon. There's going to be a lot of mechanical issues with trash, and it's going to be easy to wipe on trash in this dungeon. So I think we aggroed. What's that? What's going on there? The hunter aggroed that for some reason. But anyway, the sniper is actually the easiest mob out of the pack. Venom Piercer is just going to be like a spray type mechanic from your standard type. You see it hit both of us, so it's got poison on us, but easily dispelled, at least one of them. So nothing special there. But okay, so I guess we actually killed all the trash. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. We have another now the ambusher's in stealth, so you don't see him. Flare is going to be really good for this type of pack, but we have a defender. Now, for some reason, that Venom Fang's like already low. I think it's meant to be like they're fighting each other. I think like the skeletons are fighting. It's like in Plaguefall, there's like bunch of, or in Maldraxxus, there's a bunch of like competing factions. I think what's going on here is that, right? So anyway, the ambush, boom, it's just going to jump to a target. That doesn't do much, but it's a mechanic that you should be aware of. And then we'll see if there's any, and then there's the Bulwark of Maldraxxus. That's from the Defender of the Many Eyes, like I was saying. If you want to mind control something, this is a good target. Just get this out of the pack, because otherwise you got to stun this as well as the Enveloping Web. You get hit by the Enveloping Web, you're going to be rooted for a long time. So let's see. I don't know. I'm not maybe missing it if it's happening. Oh, Stealthlings. So it's a cast called Stealthlings, and then it's going to spawn a bunch of, so there you see. For a second, you could see where they are, and then they all go invisible. So you see, you see how it works? This is good demonstration. So they're all there. You know they're there because you looked at it. When the cast goes off, you see them, and then all you do is just go over there and do any damage around the area, any AoE, and they'll all be out. Now that you have 8 seconds or something like that to finish killing them before the cast go out, and failed to do it. So we did everything else perfectly, but nobody killed them, and they just got the cast off and killed the healer. So welcome to 5 minutes. But that's funny. But that's how it works. So just cast gets off, make sure you kill them. Don't let them get their cast off, because if they do, you will be depleting the key, very likely. So anyway, we could summon, and that's good because that helps. Okay, so let's talk about this fight. This fight is actually really easy. I feel like it's probably the easiest fight in the game, in the dungeon, sorry. But if you don't do it well, it's extremely difficult. First, casting lockpicking. By the way, you can let that expire. It doesn't do anything. It's a very ineffective lockpick. That doesn't matter. Here's the boss. Okay, so now here, immediately, if anybody is not near another player, they get a debuff. And that debuff used to be a lot worse. It used to be like a 4 seconds, something like that. Now it's like 10 seconds. And what it does is when it expires, you get wrapped in a web. And that's like a permanent stun. So you have to be broken out. I think you can icebound it, but ideally, you just never get broken, or you never get wrapped in a web. Now, it's harder than it sounds, again, because there's other mechanics that are going to influence it, but you can see these people are spread already, and they're probably, here you can see it on the Warlock. It looks like these eyes. If that debuff ticks over entirely, he will become wrapped in a web. All of the range have it for different periods of time, but it's a lot longer than it used to be. It used to be really short, like you only had a few seconds, and that would cause problems because this mechanic here. Now this is a big circle, purple circle. You do not want to soak it. He is going to get hit, and anybody in the circle is going to take a ton of damage too. So what you want to do is you want to just move out of the group. Ideally, I assume what the strategy will be here is everybody's stacked, and then that person just moves out at the last second. And it used to be like if you didn't move out at the last second, you were going to get rooted for sure, or whatever, web wrapped. But now it's like you have so much more time that doesn't matter. So it's just make sure people aren't near you and see how much time. Like there's the debuff on that, and he has well over double that period of time, but he ice blocks anyway. So okay, here's the actual hard part of the fight. Brood assassins. You might not be able to tell immediately, but there's going to be these webs on the ground. It's kind of similar to the stealthlings mechanic we were just talking about. They're going to be invisible, but you have to get them out of invisibility by running to where they are and damaging them. And the way you tell that is by looking at the webs on the ground. I don't know for sure if flare works, but it also might work if you just throw a flare on top of them. The way it works is they're just going to stand there and cast. And it kind of, when you get into melee range of them, they kind of stop doing that. But they're just going to keep throwing this poison blade at you. And we actually talked about this a couple times in different videos. And you can just let them do that. Like if you don't want to go kill them, you can do that. But they nerfed, or they buffed the amount of damage that did. So now it's a lot worse. And since there's 4 of them, it's going to stack. I mean, it's really not a good idea, honestly. So I would just go ahead and kill them. The problem is, of course, you want to get them out as fast as possible. But if you run ahead of the group, you might get into a web wrap. Make sure that doesn't happen. Don't get isolated from people. And you see all three are actually right here. So pretty easy to handle. We just get them together. They still do a lot of damage, even when they're not casting on you. But you see, yeah, I have these stacks of this debuff. That's from them casting. And then once you get them out, they won't cast anymore. But they still do a lot of magic or melee damage, I guess more so. And they just got to die as quick as possible. So that's the whole fight. I mean, that's 100% of the encounter. It's just dealing with all of that together, especially because that debuff lasts pretty long, as you see. So, basically, like, don't stand too close. Or stand close enough that you're not getting the potential eyes debuff thing getting turned into a web, but don't stand so close that it's going to be a lot harder to dodge the giant purple circle. And then be ready for when these things spawn to quickly disperse, get them out as fast as possible, gather them up, and kill them. And that's the whole fight. Very, very, very easy encounter, but the amount of times somebody doesn't do... Basically, the main issue I have is nobody ever helps me with this. I feel like I'm one of the only people who ever does this. You have to go right on top of them, as you see. It's a little bit... The web wrap, or the web stuff on the ground looks a little bit bigger than it is. Like, you can stand in the web and still not aggro the dude, so you have to actually find him. It's not a guaranteed way to do it, but that's definitely the best way. So I think you can probably, like, Demon Hunter or Hunter can probably help with it too. But anyway, you see, very dangerous. I think we actually wipe her. If I remember correctly, we actually wipe her, yeah. Because, like, things are getting out of control, like a lot of stacks, a couple people, and then it also does that ability. Maybe we should talk about that too. It does. Oh, no, that's just that mechanic. People just get hit by that. Yeah, okay. So that's an example of multiple people getting hit by that. It's pretty brutal. So, yeah, we do wipe her. So let's see some other pulls. It's such an easy fight, but again, if you don't do this well, you're really gonna struggle. Yeah, cytotoxic slash. It's just a poison. Probably just does damage, or maybe it reduces healing, or so. I don't know. Easy enough. AMS maybe, but otherwise just get through it. Not a big deal. But yeah, so you see the Hunter handles that well enough. Now this is a really good spawn. They're literally right next to us, like all four are right next to us. We never even have to move. Another great fight for Gorfiends though, because even when they get broken out, they're all still going to be a little spread out, especially if like if like a kind of a damage healer is going to go get threat on them, you might have to grip them in, but that's it. Just rinse and repeat from here. Dodge, don't be far enough away for too long that you're going to get web wrapped. That Paladin's really close to it happening. I don't think he understands. Well, he really got lucky there. I don't think he understood that that's how that fight works, but we actually lust here. I think we like barely kill this bull too. These assassins are a bigger deal than they look. The longer they're not revealed, the worse it gets. And then even when they are in melee range, like they do a lot of damage. Like this is quite a difficult tank fight. So, but yeah, you see, I think that guy went out there to get that and it just didn't happen. So you actually have to run right over it. And we're going to elect to just not even get that last one at this point. I'm just going to burn boss. And you see, it's just throwing more daggers, stacking up. That guy's dying of that. So it's a tough fight. But I love the mechanics of it. It's so straightforward. And it's just people have to do it. And it's just pretty difficult numerically, I'd say. Maybe that's the big thing. So anyway, spoiler alert, 73% count when you're going to the last boss. Very bad. Not enough count. So you'll see that firsthand here. Anyway, we're going to jump down this giant pit. Nothing special. It's just land in the water. It also is slime. As you see, I have another debuff. Now, these mobs are a very interesting mob type. I don't want to say the wrong thing here, but long story short, you don't really want to be getting meleeed by these things. Okay, I think the way it works is, let's see if we can't figure it out when we're fighting them. I think the big guy... The big guy he has a debuff on him. Okay. Oh, okay. We just hovered over it. Let's see if we can't. That's good. I was thinking ahead. I knew that was going to happen. They're slightly different, but they're both like handled in a way that you're not going to want to just stand in there and tank them. Okay. So the big guy has oozing carcass. Movement speed increased by 500%. All damage taken reduced by 30%. Immune to crowd control, stun, blah, blah, blah. Reducing damage taken by nearby allies. Okay, so the way it works is all of these mobs do like a ton of physical damage, like ridiculous amounts of melee damage. And then this guy and anyone near him take way less damage. So ideally what you want to do is you want to isolate this guy, and I guess Blizzard has helped you with that by making him move way faster than the other ones. The 500% movement speed thing is kind of like a bait. It makes it sound like he's going to move really fast, but in reality they move really slow by default. They probably move at like 300% slower than normal mobs, so it doesn't really do anything. But yeah, you want to just isolate that dude out. See, there's one in every pack. Isolate that dude out, and then let the AoE go on the other ones. The other ones are so slow, and they're going to continue to be slowed by different abilities, that it's better to just tank the big dude, and then just let the damage dealers deal with the rest. Like, as long as it's not picking melee, you really don't like have anything to worry. Like, as long as threat is on range DPS and they're not getting hit by melees, there's no value to tanking them. Like, it's not a thing. So there's actually 2 big guys in this pack, but as you see, that guy just got, I think he actually got hit by the big guy. But anyway, threat is a big problem. Now, the other problem in this room is there's a named mob, and that named mob just ported to another pack. But luckily, it doesn't aggro. I think it could if you do some kind of disease or something that might spread. I don't know how many things are in the game like that, like, you know, like Ignite, where it would just spread naturally. You see, the second I get in melee range, I get absolutely destroyed. But anyway, the guy is going to jump between the 3 packs. Like, now he's back to where he started. So I've had this happen before where he jumps and we wipe because it aggroes. But honestly, if it wasn't bolstering, I would probably just run and grab all 3, and that would be fine. As long as you can get them together, and you could probably get a Gorfiends off here. As long as you can get them together and they're slowed, like I said, as long as melee doesn't get threatened and die to melees, there's no danger to those mobs at all. They move way too slow. But this dude himself, he does like a cast. You want to make sure that it's interrupted, and just want to deal with him the best you can, because he's going to potentially aggro more trash, and you don't want to be you don't want to be like surprised by it, I guess is the point. Like, don't be caught unaware that he jumped, especially if he aggroes. I still don't understand why sometimes he aggroes, but there's the ghost step. And he's just going to jump to one of the packs. I think it's always the same order. But yeah, doesn't seem like he's... Oh, no, he aggroed, but that's probably because that hunter threw volley or whatever. But yeah, same deal here. So, oh my god! Don't do this! Stop it! I mean, you got to try to get threat, right? I feel like it's important, but like that's a guaranteed death. On like a higher key, that's literally me getting one shot there. So I don't know. Not really sure what the tanking play is going to be. Let's see, he jumped over there, and he's still casting. Oh yeah, so he does aggro. I guess that's just how it works. He's still casting. Maybe it's because we have a dot on him. I don't know. But either way, the trash is coming, and Frost Mage helping out a lot. Oh, it looks like he wait, does he empower? Oh, I think that's what he does. He empowers one of these devoted into this big devoted version of itself. And that's why, yeah, that's how it works. So just keep that in mind. I don't know. Nothing really special here. Just try to isolate the big dude and wipe to the manifestation of pride when it spawns. Now, again, we should be at like 100% count here, but this is 80%. Now, actually, this is a good example. This is something that you could do on purpose. Like, you could not be at 100% when you finish the dungeon, and then just go finish the dungeon and not have the final manifestation of pride. That's something that we used to do at Reaping all the time. Finish the dungeon at after all the bosses are dead, get 100% count, and then the final Reaping spawns after the dungeon is over. And if you've ever done that, you'll see that there's actually no, like, the mobs just despawn, or they go evaded, like, if you can't attack them anymore. So that's pretty good. It's an option, and we don't necessarily employ it on purpose here, but it certainly would save time because we're not handling the manifestation of pride well at all, and we're definitely not getting anything out of the buff. But anyway, we got the buff. Ideally, we should have just pulled it. I don't know what I'm thinking. Just going through the motions in a lot of ways on this. But ideally, we would have just pulled that trash first and then got the manifestation of pride and used it for the boss. Anyway, just make sure you're not getting killed by this. It's crazy how much damage this does. But D&D, slow D&D helps a lot. Frost Mage is going to be really kind of in meta early on. So a lot of slows. See how slow they are? Like, they're not going to reach that guy. No way. But here we go. Maybe the most interesting boss fight. Another really, really, really interesting boss fight. Let's put it this way. The boss doesn't have a lot of health. It's actually a really quick fight if you do it well. And Lust is going to help a lot here, especially if you can get the buff here too. We're going to rip through this boss, but the boss has the potential to rip through us too. So let's talk about how that works. So there's those tentacles spawn, a little bit of a visual indicator of what is to come. So the first thing it's going to do is this malignant growth. It's going to spawn this ad, malignant spawn. I think the ad is kind of like a bait. Now, if you don't tank it, obviously that's bad, but it always lines up with a safe area on the fight. So it's kind of there to show you like, oh, hey, by the way, you might accidentally be safe just by fighting this mob, you know? But the way this fight works, it's like the main concept of the fight is these tentacles that spawn. There's probably like 5 or 6 different patterns. Won't be able to go through all of them, but long story short, you just have to not get hit by them. And identifying the patterns will be something that you might have trouble with over time, but they did make it a lot easier to deal with. Now, when they're about to slap, they turn this lime green and they have a little animation play. So, like the pattern that happened here was just like a kind of clockwise thing that you just started here and went around. So we can just wait at the final tentacle and then move in that direction as it begins. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Really easy, but at the same time, we got these plague-bound devoted spawns still coming. Just like on the trash, you don't want to get meleeed by too many of them. And then again, just identify the pattern and just get in a safe spot, just right next to it, and then follow it. That's a pretty easy one, but if you get caught on the wrong side of it, you're going to die, like for sure. Like if you're in the wrong spot when it starts and you move into like the progression of it, you're just going to get hit 2 or 3 times and die. I have seen people live it, not necessarily what you want to do, and you probably won't be able to in the future, but you can definitely survive it. And the touch of slime there is like something that this mob does. If you don't stand in that, if nobody stands in it, it wipes you. But again, it's like it's almost like it's exclusively safe. Like it's never not safe. So that's a good thing. If they ever change that, it'd be a very, very, very hard fight. But it's definitely, I think, there to keep you like almost like if you don't know anything about the fight, you might still just kind of get kind of carted through the fight just by the mechanic. Like, oh, I should move and kill this ad. Okay. Oh, I'm safe. Wow, that's great. You know what I'm saying? And now here's this infectious rain. This is another mechanic. Very important mechanic. It's a kind of just a slow application of a disease. I think it's a disease. Yeah, it's a disease, as you see. And it just stacks up, I think, to 4 times or something. Maybe 5, I don't know. It's AMSable. Let's put it that way. Oh, wait, maybe it's not. Yeah, no, it definitely is. AMS is up, and I'm not gaining stacks. Another great area for AMZ as well. It can be dispelled. Dispriest's really good for this because it mass dispels it. But otherwise, it's very dangerous. And it was really dangerous at one point on the beta. They changed that. Luckily, it was just bugged, I guess. But yeah, it's really dangerous. You want to be ready for this. It's a high amount of healing. If you're the healer, get your, get your CDs going because it's going to be pretty bad healing through that on 5 people. Luckily, as DK, I could help a lot with that. But as you see, the longer these phases go, the more mechanics that we have to deal with. So again, that's another reason why Lust helps. And her actually phasing there stops that malignant spawns mechanics. So now it's basically just your standard ad. And on top of that, we have the devoted. So now here's another one that happens. It's like every spot is filled with the tentacle, but one is going to crash and then the rest are going to crash. So it's like quickly get to the edge and then you're safe. And that's that. The mage dies to the ad, I think. Mailing him, honestly. I don't know how he dies there. But another one like that. One spawns. It's going to crash. Boom. And get into that one safe spot. And you're good. Pretty good. I really like this fight. It's a really cool concept. It's going to give people fits early on, I bet. But I quite like it. Now, it does seem to me that the longer, like in the later phases, or whatever, the later parts of the fight, she does all of this together. But I don't know exactly how true that is. Yeah, see, now it's all happening. See, like the devoted are spawning, the tentacles are there to dodge, and we still have to kill her. So I think that's probably the case. Like, maybe it's based on her health pool, or maybe it's based on how many phases happen, but at some point you're dealing with infectious rain, you're dodging the tentacles, and you have the devoted, and that's pretty ridiculous. Like, it's pretty hard. And right there, I actually was just walking into my death there. Let's watch that again. So you see the progression is going this way, and I'm walking into it. So this is going to happen a lot where people are walking into the progression and they're not realizing it. So you just need to be aware. And that can get really difficult at the end of the fight like that when you have so much mechanical stress and numerical stress. It makes the fight really difficult. But anyway, we have 13% count still to get. That's pretty ridiculous. So, I mean, there's not really much else to show you. There's a lot of trash on the sides that we can get. Plague Belcher, that's just that same mob from the first boss's room. There's going to be a couple of those you're probably going to kill. Another one of these decaying flesh giants that you can kill. It's the first mob in the dungeon that we fought, the creepy crawler cast mob that I was talking about. But that's it. Obviously, you do not want to not have, you do not want to need 13% count by the end of the dungeon. I've messed up and I don't know what I'll change, but for now, just understand there's a lot of flexibility and count in this dungeon. A lot of variety in count, a lot of different mob types, a lot of different routes you can take. There's also probably a lot more things that you might not have seen in this video just because we don't necessarily do them. I think a lot of it, there's like this, here, maybe we do see it. I don't think so, actually. But yeah, there's in the middle. Actually, let me see if I can quickly go back to the middle. There's all these mobs. Okay, you might be able to see it. See these colored slimes here and these dudes that kind of look like the second boss. They're going to do all kinds of mechanics. It's kind of similar to the first, to the actual boss itself. Let's see if I can get you a better look at it. But it's probably where you're going to get count. And me not showing it, unfortunately, is probably, you're going to lose some info here. But right now, I've not pulled it a single time since I've ever done it. All these dudes, again, these claws, this claw debuff is really bad, so I wanted to skip this trash as much as I can. This spine breaker dude walking around is really bad too. Skipping this seems like a good idea to me. But I think people will disagree because it's really quickly killed fodder type trash, very low HP, a lot of it. Just one dangerous cast and that's all. So you have you're gonna see like high skill groups do this and they're gonna crush it. They're gonna make it look really, really easy. But when you're pugging, that's not the reality, okay? This is the problem. People copy the MDI routes or the top team routes, and they think, well, they did this, so this is what I should do. But just be aware that a lot of times they're doing things that you should do, but you aren't going to do, and it's going to be a lot harder than just taking a more conservative route and potentially lead to more downgrades along the way. So anyway, Plaguefall, really cool dungeon. Love the concepts here. Love the kind of the vibe of it. So let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next one.